Hello, welcome back to another video. If you're new here, hi, I'm Olga and I make sewing content that is usually vintage inspired and sometimes a little bit nerdy. But today I'm actually going to be doing something completely different. You've seen the title of this video. I'm going to be making some bins and dividers and in general organizing for my desk drawers. I have some fabrics here. These are the ones that I'm planning on using. I have about 2 meters of each of these, and these are like quilting cottons that I don't really have anything that I want to make with them. They're like a pretty narrow width. I have plenty of fabric. This is not even all the fabric that I have. I've been watching like a lot of hours of cleaning and organizing videos online. I've been having this like urge to go out and buy all these like clean plastic containers to put in my drawers and like organize my life, you know? And I'm sure I'm not the only one, but I feel like that's wasteful in a lot of ways. And my desk drawers, you'll see, are not like that bad. And I thought it'd be really cute to have like a set of like dividers and organizers and bins that all match. I thought these would be a better way than going out and purchasing like all these plastic containers. I could just use some fabric, some really stiff interfacing that I have here as well. I can make everything exactly the size and exactly like for the purpose that I wanted to have. So today's video is going to be basically me showing you the before, right? We're gonna get everything out, we're gonna measure, we're gonna make out a pattern, do the sewing, and then we're gonna, organize the drawers, and it's gonna be so much fun. And that will be that. I got these fabrics from Minerva when I went to their like birthday party event, and we got goodie bags, and my partner obviously doesn't sew, so he gave me his, so I got, 2 meters in each of our goodie bags. I also got some like other fabric, but that's in here for me to use for something else. But I think this would be a really good project to bust out some scraps. Let's go have a look at my drawers.
So the first drawer is where I keep all of my sewing tools like thread snips, markers, needles, measuring tape. All of this stuff lives here. And although you can't really see it, these drawers are quite deep. So, I'm expertly demonstrating that here. Then drawer number 2 is where I keep all of my notebooks, my calendar, my admin binder, and all of my pencil cases. But again, it's gotten a little bit messy. Drawer number 3 is for all of my tech stuff. So like chargers, cables, memory cards, camera, all that stuff. Drawer number 4 is just random sewing stuff that I need, but I actually don't use that often. So like snaps, pliers, all sorts of other tools, and like extra things like extra markers, scissor sharpeners, that kind of stuff. And my last drawer is all of my thread, and I do have a custom thread holder in here, so this will probably stay the same. Okay, so I'm going to do this one drawer at a time, starting with the top one. I don't think my drawers were really that messy, but I haven't given them a clean out in ages, so I'm sure there's lots in here that maybe is not supposed to be there. I'm starting this by taking everything out and sorting it into groups. It's basically things that need to stay and things that need to go. As you can see, I had like 6 pairs of scissors in here. Is that really necessary? I don't know. I can keep a couple in here and then keep the other ones with the rest of my spare scissors collection, because yes, there is a collection. So yeah, I keep doing that and sorting things out until this is what my desk looked like with everything out of the drawer. I gave the drawer a quick vacuum and I cleaned it as thoroughly as possible. Now I had a clean slate. I sketched out what I actually wanted for the organization of this drawer. I knew I wanted there to be 2 different sizes of containers in this one, and I tried to think about how many I would need of each, considering the things that I had decided were going back in this drawer. And that's why I did the sorting before I did the sketching out of the containers, dividers, whatever. I measured the inside of the drawer, including the height, so that I could make dividers in that exact measurement and, stop them from shuffling around in there, which was a big annoyance I had with the old cardboard box system that I had in there before. This drawer stack is from IKEA, and the inside of the top 2 drawers is 29.5 centimeters by 52 centimeters by 9. The only measurement that really changes is the height. So drawers 3 to 5 are 11 centimeters tall instead of 9. I'm giving you my measurements so that you can use them too if you have the same drawer stack, but I'll be showing you how I actually make the patterns, so you can use this for any space you want. Once I had an idea of what I wanted, I put the things back in the drawer, and whatever was getting moved somewhere else got put away. This is just so that I can have my desk back. So then I got some paper out and my quilting ruler to start patterning. You can use any ruler. I just like to use this one because it has all these markings and it really shows up well on camera. A divider is essentially a box without a top. So I like to start by drawing the bottom of the divider. This will be a rectangle or a square with the dimensions that you need. The way I came up with these dimensions was to divide the size of the drawer into however many dividers I want. So I wanted to have 4 dividers across, so they all have the same width, but then have different lengths depending on what I'm storing there. Large ones for my top drawer are going to be 15 centimeters, and the small ones are going to be half of that. So the large ones, I drew a 15 by 7.25 centimeter rectangle. I know that's a really weird measurement, but the size of the drawer is 29.5, so it means that the measurement is going to be weird. Anyway, once I have the rectangle, I add 1 centimeter of seam allowance all around. I also label all of my pieces just so I don't get turned around. If you're just making one of these, I would say you could probably draw this straight onto the fabric, but since I'm making multiples, I thought it would be easier to have a pattern. Plus, this way I can replicate it in the future. Next, to draw the sides, you have 1 smaller rectangle and then 1 larger one. Obviously, if you're making a square bin, then all of the sides are going to be the same. To draw the small side, you need the width of the base, in this case 7.25 centimeters, and the height of the container you want to make. In this case, I went with 5 centimeters, which is the height of the side of the drawer, not the total height of the drawer, but just the side. To those measurements, I add a 1 centimeter seam allowance. I had to tape on some extra paper to add my seam allowance, but that's okay, you can totally do that. Then to draw the larger side, I'm using the length of the base, which is in this case is 15 centimeters, and the height of the container, which is going to be the same 5 centimeters I used for the small side. Again, I'll be adding 1 centimeter of seam allowance all around, but you can do whatever seam allowance you're comfortable with. Any container and bin that you make will be a variation of this pattern. You make the base and then you use that to design the sides. If you're a visual learner like me, it could be really useful to have a box near you so you can actually look at it like I was doing here. So I've gone ahead and made a smaller pattern too, which is the half of the length of the container that I just showed you how to make. And I'm ready to start cutting out my fabric. These cottons are from a brand called Camelot fabrics. Only the hexagon print is still available on Minerva, but I've gone ahead and linked it. I like the hexagon print the best, so I'm using that as my lining for the containers because I'm going to be seeing the lining way more than the outer fabric. When you're making one container, you need 1 layer of the base and 2 of each side of each of the main fabric, lining, and interfacing. I'm making 4 large and 6 small containers for the first drawer, so I found it easier to draw the lines in the fabric so I could actually puzzle things out and waste the least amount of fabric possible. I went ahead and cut my fabric like always. I guess you could use a rotary cutter too, but I'm just more accustomed to using my shears. Once I've cut everything out of the main fabric, I repeat that for the lining. And then I'm using this super stiff interfacing to give the containers shape and structure. I first cut out the full pattern from the interfacing, but then I realized that it would probably be best to not include the seam allowance to make it easier to sew and save on the interfacing since I didn't have as much of that as I did of the fabric. So I cut off the seam allowances on the first batch of interfacing pieces, and then I folded the pattern pieces along the seam allowances to use for the rest of the cutting. When I had everything cut out, I started fusing the interfacing to the fabric. I'm honestly not really a fan of this stuff. It does its job, but it is so hard to fuse to the fabric, and even after I think I've got it fused, when I start handling it to sew the fabric, it starts peeling off. I sorted all my pieces into piles to make things easier, and then I started batch pinning things together. I'm first sewing all of the sides together, and then I'll stitch the bottom to it to form my container. I'm pinning 1 long side to 1 short side, then another long side to that short side. Then I add another short side to the chain and finally pin the whole square closed. I'm going to repeat that for all of my dividers, both for the lining and the outer fabric. Obviously, I'm pinning with right sides together, and I say pinning, but I'm actually using magic clips because, I was finding it really hard to pin through the interfaced bits. Once I've got all these pinned together, I'm going to start stitching them together. I stitched all the sides on both the outer and lining fabric pieces. Now that the sides are stitched together, I'm going to clip the corners of the bottom pieces and then pin them to the square or rectangle or like divider. This can be a little tricky, but take your time and don't be scared to clip the corners of the sides, as well if you need them, or clip into the seam allowances to make them easier to maneuver. I'm going to be pinning the bottoms to all of the sides for the lining and outer fabrics. Then it's time to sew them together. Here I like to start on one side and sew them until the seam allowance, and then leave my needle in and pivot the fabric, making sure to move the sides over to avoid stitching over them. I trimmed the corners of the box and turned the outer fabric ones right side out. Then I fold over the seam allowance in and pin it in place. Next, I place the lining inside with wrong sides together, making sure to match the seams. I fold over the seam allowance on the lining as well and pin it to the outer divider. Lastly, I top stitch these two together. You could do a bag lining situation if you wanted, but I thought this would be quicker and easier for me and avoid hand sewing. And then you can start putting things in your dividers if you're impatient like me. Now I just have to repeat that whole thing for all of my drawers depending on what I need for each of them. So for drawer number 3, I'm still doing dividers, but I actually wanted to make a bag for this laptop stand because I hate this gray bag it came in. And I also wanted to make a padded bag for my camera. So let me show you how I patterned those. For the laptop base, I use the bag that I already have. I turn it inside out so I can have the stitching lines visible, and then I draw it out on paper. This is basically a big rectangle that is cut on the fold. I don't want mine to be a drawstring, but everything else will be the same. Once I've copied it out, I add 1 centimeter of seam allowance to the stitching line. And I just wanted to show you this cute little Zeus trinket dish that I made a few years ago. For the camera bag, I measured the camera and then drew a rectangle that is a bit larger than that. Again, I wanted to use snaps for closure on the bags on both of them because I didn't really want to do zippers and I just find snaps easier. And of course, I also made the patterns for the dividers in this drawer, which will be variations of the other ones I showed you earlier in this video, but just a little bit taller or a little bit different depending on what I'm housing in them. Then of course, I repeat the whole process of cutting and fusing and stitching. For the bags I'm making here, I'm not doing fusible interfacing. For the laptop base bag, I'm actually doing no interfacing, and for the camera, I'm doing wadding. I cut the fabric for the laptop base bag on the fold, so I kept it folded and just have to sew the bottom and side closed. Again, you can do a bag lining, but I'm not going to for this one. Once I've sewn those closed, I'm going to trim the corners and seam allowances. Then I turned the outer fabric inside out and placed the lining in with the wrong sides together. I chose to make the outer of these bags the hexagon print because I like that better, and I'll be seeing the outer fabric more than the lining of the bags. Just like I did for the dividers, I fold the seam allowances in at the top and pin the 2 layers together. Finally, I top stitch that closed. I picked out the snaps that matched the color of the fabric and then poked a hole through both sides with my awl to ensure that both sides match up, and then attached the snaps with this plier contraption. For the camera bag, I picked out the fabric from my pile of pieces and started quilting it. This will make the outer fabric and wadding become one, and supposedly it makes things more cushiony. Anyway, I did a few diagonal lines because I didn't really want to waste too much time on a fancy design, but you totally can if you want to. I felt like the stitching would get lost in the print as well, so I went with simple lines. I'm using this little metal piece which you screw into the machine and it becomes a guide for your lines. I do that for both outer pieces of the camera bag before I move on to putting it together. Once I've got them quilted, I trim the excess wadding from the sides. For the outer fabric, I'm stitching it on all sides but one, and for the lining, I'm doing the same but leaving an opening to turn the bag out of. Then I clip the corners and seam allowances and place the lining inside the bag with right sides together. I pin at the seams to make sure that they're matching and stitch them all together along the top. Next, I trim the seam allowances of the top and turn the bag inside out through the hole I left in the lining. And this is what I mean by bag lining. Using my point turner, I make sure to push out the corners while I can access them through the hole in the lining. Then I can close the hole on my machine. You can also do this by hand if you want an invisible finish. Finally, I push the lining to the inside and add a line of top stitching to the top to keep everything in place and match the rest of the bags and dividers, and I also add a snap fastener. Now the reveal / organizing the drawers. First I added the hole punch, the tape dispenser, extra pins, and my business cards to the back of this drawer. Then my box of bobbins, tissues, little notepad, and glasses cleaner liquid, and the first divider, which is going to house all of my sewing machine presser feet. The second one is where all of my pins will live. The next one is for measuring tapes. I know I have a lot, that's not even all of them. Then my magic clips and this one and the pins or divider will be coming out of the drawer whenever I need them. Next I have a miscellaneous one with my lighter, tags, safety pins, bodkin, tapestry needle, and needle threaders. The last one in this row is my lip balm, gum, a hair elastic, nail clipper, and a cleaning cloth for my glasses. For the first large one in this drawer, I'm doing my most used tools, including my awl, seam ripper, my 2 favorite small scissors, and my seam gauge. Next, I'm going to put all my fabric markers and tailor's chalk, then a miscellaneous one with calculator, mini rotary cutter, sewing machine needles, thimbles, thread wax, and finally my extra tools like cleaning brushes for the machines, little screwdrivers, then my pinwheel, tweezers, and other bits and bobs of the sort. For drawer number 2, I'm putting in my post-it notes and such at the back, then a divider I made for it which houses a glue stick, extra pens, stapler, and other stationery bits. I'm putting in my pencil case as well, which I know I didn't make a matching one, but this one has sentimental value. Then I put in my admin binder and the notebooks I'm actually currently using, my ideas notebook, my sewing journal, and not pictured in here is actually my daily notebook for my to-do lists. For drawer number 3, I made this bigger bin to house like miscellaneous camera bits that I don't really use too much to go all the way at the back. And I also made a small one that has the same width, but for my extra camera lens. For the next row, I made a square-ish sort of bin to house my microphone, and then 2 smaller ones of the same width, one for my spare batteries, and another one for my headphones. The last row is 4 dividers, all of the same size. The first one is for my little tripods and attachments of that nature. Then I made one for my hard drives, SD cards, and other memory bits, as well as the attachments I need to plug them into my laptop. Next, I have one for chargers. The plugs stay on one side and the cables on the other. And the last one is for my camera bag. The bag for the laptop base goes at the front here. Drawer number 4 stayed pretty much the same. I just added other bits here that were lost in other drawers, like extra fabric markers and like my sewing machine oil and other sewing machine parts. And the last one is the same, still housing my custom-made thread holder. This one was made for me for this drawer by my granddad, so it's really unlikely to be replaced.
Okay, so that's the project for this week all done. I hope you enjoyed it and maybe you learned something new. I think it came out really, really cute, and the desk drawer stack definitely feels more organized, and really excited with all of that. So I feel like I've done my spring cleaning for this year, maybe, I don't know. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope that maybe it inspires you to do something about your organizing as well. It doesn't necessarily mean you have to go out and buy all these like clear plastic organizers. You can make them really cute. If you did enjoy that, don't forget to maybe subscribe to my channel if you haven't done that already. It would mean a lot to me. And also consider following me on Instagram or TikTok. I will link those below, and that way you can keep up to what I'm doing, get some cute dog photos probably as well. And of course, as always, I will also be leaving a link to everything that I can down below so you can find it really easily if you want to get any of the things that I showed you in this video. So that's everything for me for today. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I will see you in the next one.